Welcome to the League of Women Voters of Chicago's Zooming with the Alderman series of interviews. And my name is Deborah Halpern, and a few notes about the Chicago League of Women Voters. We were founded over 100 years ago, 101 years ago, and the League is a nonpartisan political organization. We encourage the informed and active participation of citizens in government. We work to increase understanding of major public policy and issues. We try to influence public policy through education and advocacy. And the League is one of hundreds of local leagues all across the country. These interviews with the aldermen are part of our effort to educate people about those who represent us in setting the policies and ordinances that govern us right here in Chicago. Today, we are very pleased that our guest is Alderperson Michael Rodriguez. So welcome. He represents the 22nd Ward, and we sincerely appreciate you taking the time to be with us. Please know that this Zoom session is being recorded and will be available for viewing after today on the League website. We will be sending you, Alderperson Rodriguez, and everyone who registered for this program who is not a member, a link to the video when it becomes available. Also, everyone should know that we have provided the alderman with a copy of the questions that we'll be asking today ahead of time. And before we start with the questions, we want to show all of you a complete map of the 50 wards in Chicago, and we'll follow that up with a close-up of the 22nd Ward. So here you can see all 50 wards of Chicago, and we are highlighting the 22nd Ward over there on the west side. And next we will show you what the 22nd Ward looks like. And there you go. So based on all of that, welcome, Alderperson Rodriguez.
Well, Deborah, thank you for having me. And I really thank the League of Women Voters for doing this for the public. I think this is amazing, and I'm glad to be a part of it. Thank you for inviting.
Oh, we are happy to have you. So let's dig right in. And you just saw a map, a picture of the map of your ward. And can you just fill us in on the main boundaries of the ward and basically what kind of neighborhoods and what is comprised within your ward?
Sure. So my ward roughly extends from about Cermak and Kedzie to 51st and Laramie. So it's a rather large ward, but not the most gerrymandered of wards, if you will. I've seen worse, a lot worse. The fact is that we have 18 Little Village precincts, 2 North Lawndale precincts, and 5 precincts that straddle 47th and Cicero, made up of the communities of LeClaire-Hurst, Sleepy Hollow, and Vidham Park. So we are a very working class neighborhood, made up of the fabric of Chicago society. Those working class residents who are Black, they're brown, they're white, they are Chicago, they are the 22nd Ward. And I wouldn't be fully transparent if I didn't talk about the 22nd Ward just a little bit more, and my organization, the 22nd Ward Independent Political Organization, that was founded in 1983 by a group of progressive Black, brown, and progressive white individuals on the southwest side of Chicago who were organizing, 1, for women's rights, 2, for immigrants' rights, but 3, to elect our first African-American mayor, Harold Washington. I believe we were probably the first Latino majority organization to be on board with Harold Washington. Our founding president was Rudy Lozano. He was running for alderman on the Washington ticket, then was brutally murdered several weeks after he almost forced a runoff. But his campaign manager was a young man at the time with a nice mustache, and his name was Chuy Garcia. And he subsequently ran and won office here in the 22nd Ward. And his campaign manager was a great man by the name of Ron Mustin from North Lawndale, a Black African-American leader in our community. And we remain an organization to this day represented by all neighborhoods in the 22nd Ward and in our great diversity.
Wow, what a beautiful history for your ward.
Yes,
that really is.
I agree more. Yes.
Can you just mention for us Is it primary residential? Do you have, is it single and duplexes? Are there any high rises? And also, what about the business end of the ward? What's going on there?
So our ward is made up primarily of single family homes, 2 flats and 3 flats.
Mhm.
On the eastern part of the ward, you get a lot more 3 flats. And on the southern end of the ward and in North Lawndale, you get a lot of bungalows and single family homes. The only high rise, there's only one high rise close to our ward. We're not in, we don't have this high rise in our ward, but it's the Cook County Jail, which is in the 12th ward, just east of us. Outside of that, there's really not much in the way of high rises here. We are a very working class ward, and we like it that way.
Perfect. Okay. What are the key issues facing the people of the 22nd Ward?
Sure. So we knew right away that once the COVID pandemic was upon us, that our community was going to get disproportionately hurt. We have the highest percentage of immigrants and undocumented in the Midwest in some of our communities. So we knew that many of our residents wouldn't have access to federal stimulus dollars, to unemployment insurance at the state level, nor would they have access to paid sick days off, because that's just the fact of our people. And they're working in essential businesses. We were hit hard. Early on in the pandemic, we were the zip code, the 60623 zip code that makes up North Lawndale and Little Village, and then subsequently our southern part of our district were some of the highest, if not the highest, impacted in positive COVID positive examinations. So we knew we had to work on this issue from the get. I started convening a table of hospitals and clinics and nonprofits to work on that issue. We meet weekly on the issue. And I'm proud to say that now we have some of the Black and brown communities with the highest vaccination rates in anywhere in the city of Chicago that rival many of the census tracts in the city of Chicago and throughout the Midwest. We still got a lot of work to do. We're still disproportionately impacted in our community. Parts of our community, South, has less resources and access to vaccination. A lot of seniors in that part of our ward. And we fought hard to get testing in that part of the ward and then vaccination. I would say that's the number one issue that's been impacting us over the last year and a half. The second issue is the issue of violence. And I know we're going to talk about it potentially a little bit later, but I would be remiss to not mention the issue of violence in our community being perpetrated. And, it's not just, what some would perceive as gang violence. We're talking about interpersonal violence. We're talking about domestic violence in our community. That's something we're struggling with and we continue to work on day in, day out.
Wow. Congratulations, seriously, on getting the vaccination rate up in your ward. And it sounds as though you could be a model for other wards as well.
Yeah, we really came together. We had a group of hospitals at our table that when we looked at the data the Chicago Tribune reported, 5 of the top 6 hospitals and clinics in the city that service the hardest hit zip codes were at our collaborative. So, from Esperanza Health Center, St. Anthony Hospital were the top 2. Lawndale Christian Health Center, Oak Street Health, others that are at our table have been real partners in, hitting our communities hard with the vaccinations, but then also strategizing. We had several nonprofits raise $500,000 or more to support undocumented families who had no access to the state or federal support. That money went straight to those families. We had organizations who were delivering diapers and checking in, making phone calls to our seniors. We really came together as a community, and we still have so much more to do.
What a beautiful effort. And
thank you.
Good luck on reaching everybody. Okay, we're going to turn more towards you now, if we could. And when did you first join the city council? And honestly, why did you decide to run for alderperson again in 2019?
Well, it was in 2014 and 2013 when a group of community leaders, including members of my political organization, started approaching me. They saw the work that I had done in the community. And over the years, I was the executive director of a nonprofit. I had worked in the neighborhood and in the ward since college at the local park district, helping people get jobs thereafter in the community, working on the violence prevention issue. President Obama named me a champion of change in youth violence prevention during his tenure. So it was subsequent to all that and me getting a master's degree in community planning, organizing and development from the University of Chicago, that a number of my leaders said, hey, you know, our alderman's been in there for a long time. We think it's time for you to kind of step up. So they actually drafted me to run for a Democratic committee person in 2015 and 2016. And I set a record in that race, Deborah. I got the highest percentage vote ever in that race. I got 100% of the vote. No one ran against me. So I became the Democratic committee person of the ward. And then subsequent to that, the leaders who had approached me for that race also thought I should run for alderperson in 2019. And I did. And in a four-way race, we came out with close to 65% of the vote. So I think, you know, the strength of my organization and kind of like my history working here put me in a position where a lot of community leaders and residents saw me as an ideal candidate for their alderperson and supported my race then. And I was happy to take on the race and to take on the tremendous task of being the alderperson of this ward.
Well, it's wonderful when you have the overwhelming support of the community like you just described. That's fabulous. Do you have any other employment right now besides the alderperson?
Well, no, I think my organization historically has said our elected officials need to be full-time at their jobs, and that's what I am. I'm a full-time alderperson, and the only thing I do on the side is as volunteer, as Democratic committee person of the ward. I'm also the executive vice chair of the Cook County Democratic Party. Tony Preckwinkle came to me some years ago and said, hey, I represent the Hillary part of the party. You represent the Bernie part of the party here in the county. Why don't we get together and run the Democratic Party from that diversity of ideological spectrum in the Democratic Party? And I was happy to take on that position and work with her and others as we move the party in a more progressive manner, in my humble opinion.
It would be interesting to know if Hillary and Bernie were aware of their counterparts at the county level.
Well, I served as one of the vice chairs of Bernie's latest campaign for president here in the state of Illinois, and it was an absolute pleasure to support someone that I really believed in. But I'm most happy that we got 45 out and that we have someone in who really understands working families.
Okay, one more question on the city council is, can you let us know what committees you currently serve on, and are you vice or chair of any of them?
So I serve on 10 committees. That's the maximum number of committees you can serve on. I serve on the aviation committee. I'm the only freshman on the budget committee. I serve on the committee on rules, which is a committee of all alderpersons, contract oversight and equity, housing, special events, workforce, zoning. I serve on the newly created Immigration and Refugee Rights Committee, and I am the vice chair of the Transportation Committee.
Wow. And that was all 10.
There's 18 committees, 19, I think now, if I remember correctly, and I'm on the max 10 of them.
And just on average, how many different committee meetings would you go to on any given day?
Well, it depends. So, for instance, housing and zoning typically meet once a month. The zoning committee can be as long as 5 or 6 hours. However, for instance, the special events committee meets maybe once every 3 months, and the chair there calls it the happy committee, and it maybe meets for 15 to 30 minutes. So it really depends on the committee. The budget committee, now that the budget's coming up, might meet 3 times a month. It really depends on the week and the month.
Okay. What changes, if any, would you like to see made in the council?
Well, I think we need to continue to have a series of checks and balances. I ran as a reformer. I ran as potentially limiting some aldermanic prerogative. But at the same time, I also don't think that we should only give mayoral prerogative a thing. So I think we need a series of checks and balances. Also, I think that the legislative branch needs to be empowered as far as it comes to city council. And we probably need a parliamentarian that is independent of either the mayoral, the executive or legislative branch of city government. So those are some of the changes I'd explore.
Interesting.
Mhm.
Moving back to what you referred to earlier on the violence and the issues surrounding that, what are a few of the actions the city has currently taken to reduce gun violence that you think have been or will be effective?
So I think you have to look at this issue comprehensively. We need support from our federal government. There's absolutely sensible legislation at a federal level to limit the ability for individuals to be able to receive a firearm and set up some roadblocks for those who shouldn't have them to getting them. We know countless individuals get guns legally, but then under the table are selling them. As a matter of fact, in front of my house several months ago, I saw the police stop an individual who turned out to be from Indiana, who was ready to sell guns in my community. We need to make sure that there are more sensible laws on the books when it comes to guns and gun access. I support non-police first response. I think we need to build that out. I think it's absolutely wrong that our city budget is so reliant and so heavily invested in policing. Listen, there's a place for policing in our society. We need to have good policing, good community policing in our society. But the fact that we're so overwhelmingly reliant just on policing doesn't make sense to me. We need non-police response to mental health crises, to situations with our juveniles. So we need to double down there. And last thing I would say is we need real long-term, significant, deep investment in violence intervention and prevention work that I think works. That's what I've worked on in my career. We need to continue to really dig deep in that area, be evidence-based and outcome-oriented in that type of work. I really believe that this comprehensive approach to violence prevention and intervention is what we need to stem gun violence in our community, but violence in general.
And that whole systemic approach makes all the sense in the world. But do you think that the city council currently has done anything specifically to curb the gun situation in Chicago?
Well, listen, I think part of the reason that I voted for the city budget this last year, because we increased violence prevention dollars. We've gone from $0 several years ago to now close to $40 million going towards the area. It's still not enough. When you think of that as a percentage of the overall policing budget, it's not enough. So we need to double down in that area. I think I'm very proud that a number of community-based organizations came together to create the Communities Empowered for Public Safety Ordinance that was passed with 36 votes at City Council recently. I was a very early supporter of that endeavor, and I helped whip the votes in the Progressive Caucus for that policy that passed that will give community more say in and really more power over policymaking and decision-making within our police force.
Okay. Right now that the new census data has just been released, the city council has not embraced having an independent commission draw the new wards. And so it's still the older people that will be drawing the wards. And as part of this series of interviews, the league has seen that many neighborhoods are divided among 2, 3, 4 or more wards. Do you think that the council members should strive to keep neighborhoods in a single ward or at most 2 wards?
Well, absolutely. But there are so many different factors that go into this. And I learned this the hard way in the last 15 years. As a neighborhood activist, as someone who worked with organizers and worked myself on grassroots efforts to redraw boundaries, I get this more than most. I'll give you an example. The community I grew up in, Little Village, in the 2000s was separated into 5 state rep districts. And not one of those state representatives lived in Little Village, right? And you want to talk about the 22nd Ward as being a major business center. 26th Street, second magnificent mile. Cicero Avenue has such potential for growth. But communities being divided is not a good thing. So we worked on the issue, and our grassroots coalition was able to get a couple of wins 10 years ago at the state level. We were able to keep Chinatown in 1 state rep district, subsequently electing our first Asian state representative in Teresa Ma, a strong ally of mine. In addition, we were able to get Little Village into 2 state rep districts. They did a number on us. They still divided our precincts by alleys and really wild. But this last year, due to the constant presence of activists and organizers, and quite frankly, legislators who now came from the community, the district is now in 1 state rep and 1 state senate district. The Little Village community is now in 1 state rep and house district, with the state senator and the state rep, both lifelong residents of the Little Village community. I think that kind of grassroots organizing, that kind of grassroots movement, is what we need to achieve the change that we're looking for. I will say on the 22nd Ward, very quickly, in the municipal map, I'm already the highest Latino, Latinx, Hispanic ward in the city of Chicago at 89–90%. And I get about 2/3 of Little Village. If I got any more of Little Village, I now would be in the 90 percentile as far as Hispanic or Latino. So, there are some who would rather me take all of Little Village, but then we'd be packing Latinos in 1 district, would not allow us to achieve as many Latino influence or Latino districts as possible. So there's some dynamics there that we need to be careful about. Yes, I agree. Communities should be whole and in 1 district where possible, but then there are these other dynamics of community empowerment that we also need to be aware of.
Well, I have often heard that the devil is in the details.
Yes.
So I wish everyone a lot of luck. It's a very significant issue that really needs to be addressed, and the League of Women Voters will always be looking at that. Another issue regarding the council is that currently, when one candidate, whether it's mayor or alderperson, does not receive 50% plus 1 vote, there is always a February runoff. And our question to you is, based on the example, for example, in New York City, where they did ranked choice voting, is that something that you would be interested in or considering in lieu of a second election runoff?
Right. So currently we have a February election with an April runoff. And then in May, the new council and mayor come in. I think that to give voters and the elected officials more time to potentially come into office, I think would be a good idea. I think ranked choice voting is a good idea. I think not having the municipal election in the historically coldest month and coldest week of the year would be a good idea to bring more people out to vote. So maybe we can move the election to late March, for instance, to hopefully get better weather and increase turnout. I think those are good things. Any efforts, as far as I'm concerned, to increase the number of people who come out to vote, who increase democracy, who increase our great institution of voting and participation in that great institution, is an excellent idea. So I'm on board, and I'd love to see how we can move this forward and potentially get the state legislature to do some things like this. If it's not this election, maybe the next one.
There's always the future. And thank you for the correction. You were absolutely right. I was reading too quickly.
Oh, no, I didn't correct you. It was just a part of my...
No, but it's true. So, and I do like the idea of not holding an election on the coldest week of the year.
How about it?
In Chicago.
Yeah.
Okay, so If the league wanted to support one of your primary initiatives, what steps would you recommend we take to assist you?
So I'd put that question back on you. And let me give you the context. I was very proud that I campaigned on two major issues that were addressed in the first half of my first term. So I campaigned hard on fair work week legislation. And Labor came to me and said, hey, we want you to be the chief co-sponsor. So I did. I worked hard on that issue with one of my colleagues, the chief sponsor, Sue Garza-Salowski, to get that bill moved forward. That would give predictive scheduling to largely Black and brown women who need that predictive scheduling at no risk for their loss of employment if they were able to, they weren't able to make, let's just say, a change in their schedules at the last minute, and then potentially be ridiculed, fired even for not being able to make their schedule work. Labor came to me with that piece of legislation. The Immigration Coalition Working Group and the Illinois Coalition for Immigrant and Refugee Rights came to me with a proposal to end the carve-outs in the welcoming city ordinance to make our city a true welcoming city for immigrants. We were able to get that accomplished as well. So I suggest that institutions like the Women Voters partner with a very willing alderperson and me to work on these incredible issues. The accessory dwelling unit ordinance is one that I was very happy to be a part of. That expands the potential for affordable housing in my ward. The AARP and other organizations approached me about that piece of legislation, and now in one of 5 zones in the city of Chicago that allows for accessory dwelling units to be legal. I'd say, what are the issues you want to work on? And let's work on them together. Now, I would say that there are things that I'm working on, like on violence prevention, on COVID, on things like the ADU that I mentioned, that I would love to get folks involved and engaged with. We want your time, treasure, and talents. So league members, find this guy. I'm ready to take you in. If you got time, if you got treasure, you got talent, very willing and able to have you come in. I'm sure you can find me at Ward 22 at cityofchicago.org, or call my office at 762-1771. We'd love to have you.
Well, league members and prospective league members, our invitation is out. We thank you for that one.
Yes.
Finally, our last question for you is, what are several things that you personally would like to get done or even started before your term is over in 2023?
So I'd say a couple of things. One is there's some major development projects that would have multiplier effects in my ward. The first I'd talk about is what we affectionately call the gateway to Midway, I-55 Expressway south to the Midway Expressway, forgive me, Midway Airport. Along Cicero Avenue there's so much potential for growth. There's so many empty storefronts and abandoned buildings along that corridor, but I could just imagine the redevelopment there, and it's happening. We've got the Academy for Global Citizenship building, $35 million beautiful school in that area. We have Cabrera Development that's working on the redevelopment of the Leclerc Courts. That would bring 200 units of affordable housing in phase 1 to the corridor, but then also would bring a new grocer and a 20,000 square foot medical facility that would serve our whole community there. I'm so excited about that. There's some exciting development on the opposite side of the street. That's the west side of Cicero Avenue. On the east side, I'd love to see restaurant development, job training, potential for a metro stop there maybe in the long term. Like, there's so much that can happen there on Cicero Avenue, and we're moving forward on that, but there's so much more that we can do there. I think about developments like St. Anthony Hospital. The aforementioned St. Anthony Hospital, that's the top performing hospital in the city of Chicago and working with impacted communities on COVID. Well, they have the potential, and we've been able to get the land over to them to develop a new hospital there on 31st and Kedzie, affordable housing there potentially as well, some commercial development. There's a lot of potential there. I'm hopeful that we can make that project happen. So those mega developments have multiplier impacts in our community. They bring jobs to our community. They bring clean jobs to our community. All these developments we're talking about here, we're not talking about bringing more trucks into the neighborhood. We're talking about bringing in good paying jobs that are largely unionized into our community. And then I'd say there's a couple other things, like there's preservation efforts here. We've got to help long-term homeowners in our community be able to stay in our various communities, whether it's seniors through the ADU ordinance, be able to retrofit their buildings, legalize a coach house so they can keep their sons and daughters or affordable renters at home. I'd love to be able to offer that to our seniors. We also need to expand our support services for seniors and those experiencing violence, whether it's domestic violence or street-based violence. I think those are some of the efforts that I think about, that I go to sleep at night thinking about, that I wake up in the morning thinking about, pouring my heart and energy into these issues. I want to continue to do that with you, the League of Women Voters. You've been so crucial to our city. You have a great history of moving legislation, but then more importantly, moving people, because that's what we need to do. We need to move people to action, and the League knows how to do that. Here locally, we have some great members of the League. Josie Yanguas is one of them, and we have some others that are amazing League supporters. So, I want to work in partnership with you and your membership to move our communities forward.
Well, Alderperson Rodriguez, your enthusiasm is contagious and exciting and motivating. So we will get out there. At this point, I just want to thank you so very much for being with us today. And I would like to remind everybody that's watching, a link to this program will be found on Chicago's League website, and everyone who registered for today's program who is not a League member is cordially invited to join the League. We hope you will join us because, as the Alderperson just said, he needs people. So when you do that, you will also sign up for notices of future programs. We hope you will continue to join us for future Zooming with the Alderman programs. We are trying to reach all 50 Alderpersons. I thank you once again, Alderperson Rodriguez, for your time. And we don't want to keep you. You've got a lot to do. So thank you so much, everybody, for listening.
Thank you, Deborah.